Our next guest was inducted into the University of Maryland Athletics Hall of Fame on October 18th. He was a 2002 Wooden Award All-American and a three-time All-ACC honoree, one of just 15 Terps to garner that honor three times. He helped Maryland to back-to-back Final Four appearances, including the 2002 National Championship. We are so honored to have on Lonnie Baxter this week. Lonnie, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Awesome. So let's start with the recent induction. Like, what did that mean to you to get into the Athletics Hall of Fame here at Maryland?
It was just a dream come true. Me being a kid that grew up in Maryland, always wanting to play for the Terps, and just the whole legacy of playing under Gary Williams and the national championship, everything. It was just icing on the cake.
And I know a lot of your former teammates were at that ceremony. Just what did it mean to you to see all the guys there?
It was great. Some of them we haven't seen in a long time. It was just a great feeling. Juan was there, Byron Mouton, Steve Francis, Gary Williams, Coach Passos, Walt Williams, Johnny Rose. Some guys who played before me. So it was really nice event. With a lot of legends in the house.
Have you stayed connected with a lot of those guys, or was it your first time seeing them in a little bit?
I stay connected with most. I speak to Johnny all the time. Walt Williams, every time I come back to games, he does the radio there. And, me and Steve Francis talk all the time. We have a group chat where, whenever it's everybody's birthday, all the Terrapins, Coach Williams, even our trainers, some of our managers from the team, we all keep in touch. So we're pretty close knit.
When you came to Maryland, there's a story about how kind of you were told that you weren't going to play much and that type of thing. When do you think you really made the impression on the coaches that like, hey, I can be a valuable part of what we want to do here?
Probably towards the end of my freshman year, Abina Akizi, our starting center, had gotten hurt. He had tore his ACL, so I had to step in and fill in his shoes. And once I stepped in from there, it was just a different situation. Like I said, when I came into Maryland, the expectations weren't that high for me. They were saying, this person's in front of him, he's not going to play. But like I say, after the end of that freshman year, everything changed after being Akizi got hurt, and I stepped in for him.
Speaking of your freshman year, your roommate, Juan Dixon, obviously, I think you called him your big brother from the jump. Give us your best Juan story. We're talking to him later on, and know that he's got a pretty funny personality. So what's a good off the court story the two of you guys have?
There's so many I probably couldn't say it on camera, but Steve Francis was my roommate from freshman year. So
My
going
bad,
back
my
to
bad,
that,
Juan, my bad. Yeah, Steve Francis.
that's cool.
And for both of those guys, like, you played with obviously some great guys. Juan, Steve Blake too. It was there. Who really stood out to you as kind of like somebody that you looked up to for maybe their work ethic or who they were on the court?
Steve Blake, he was the guy that ran our offense. He was the guy that kept us in check. He was a person who could score, but he was pass first. Always fed the ball to me inside. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have the career I had. So Steve Blake is definitely the most important glue guy for the Maryland Terrapins.
One of the funniest things about Steve Blake that I've seen is there's footage of a fight that he got into in 2002. There's some hands were being thrown. Can you kind of describe that moment for us? What happened?
Steve is just a competitor. Things got a little chippy, during pickup one summer, and I think it was him and John Gilchrist got into a little scuffle, but, it's just brotherly love. A little love taps never hurt anybody, so that's just who Steve is.
Was Gary? What was Gary's reaction there? Was he like kind of like the competitiveness, or was he like, get on the line, we're all running?
Oh, he definitely loved it. I don't think Gary was there that day. I think Jimmy Passos was there, a couple former players. It was summertime pickup, but like I say, a little love taps never hurt anybody. It's just those guys being competitive. They got chippy and just they laughed it off, went to eat together later on, and that's that.
Were your practices usually high intense like that at Maryland? Like, what was the intensity level?
Well, playing for Gary Williams, if it wasn't intense, you weren't going to play for him. You might as well not even showed up if you thought you were going to have a easy practice. But yeah, all the practices were intense. every day was like game day. That's how we practiced, and this is how we competed, and that made us who we were.
I wanted to ask about the two Final Four years. So after you guys fall to Duke in 2001, I believe, you guys, I believe you wanted to face Duke again in the Final Four. It would have been in the national championship that year. Can you kind of describe the rivalry that you guys had with the Blue Devils at that time? And obviously, you didn't end up facing them in the national championship, but what was that relationship like with the Blue Devils?
They were in our conference back then when we played in the ACC, so we saw them, many times throughout the year in tournaments, and we felt like we should have won in 2001 against them, but things happened and we lost. And then the next year we came back. We didn't get a chance to them, at the Final Four as they lost to Indiana, and that's who we played in the national championship. We just, like I said, we won that year. We were determined to get back to that stage. We weren't going to let anything, keep us from getting back to that stage where we felt like we should have won. So that's why we were so hungry and so determined to win a national championship in 2002.
What did you guys learn from that first Final Four experience that you kind of carried into 2002?
Just to never give up. I mean, we thought we had that game won up 22 at half, and then the second half things took a turn for the worse. So we became more resilient. We became more just foot on their throats when we come out. Don't let up. Just keep going, keep grinding, and it's never over until the buzzer sounds.
Sorry to bring back a bad memory for you, but I've seen the 2001 game, and you got called for a foul late on. I think you kind of gave the phantom foul. What happened on that play? Kind of take everybody who, for guys like us, we weren't even alive. So give us the kind of break.
To be honest with you, I don't even know what happened. I just fell to my knees in disbelief. Like, are you serious? But I mean, whatever, calls were made, whatever things happen, you just got to live with it, make the best out of it, and learn from your mistakes.
You guys are one of the only national championship winning teams without a McDonald's All American. Is that something you guys knew, afterwards or into that game? And how much was that kind of like a, not to use a cliche, but the chip on your shoulder type thing?
Of course, we were a bunch of young, hungry guys that were just out to prove themselves, Like you said, no McDonald's All Americans, just wanting to win. And show guys that we were able to compete for a national championship with anybody. We weren't afraid to play anybody, whoever we faced, we were there to show guys that we were serious.
So now you're working as a product specialist at Coons Ford Silver Spring. I was kind of wondering, how did you get into the car dealership post your playing career? Was that something you had your eyes on before, or is that just something you kind of got into?
Nah, it's something I just kind of fell into. You know, um, I met a person, who told me, he was like, I'm going to hire you because I know you're going to have great work ethic. His name was Kyle Robson. He was like, I know you're going to have great work ethic because you played for Gary Williams. And since that day, I've just been selling cars and haven't thought about anything else.
Give us your best pitch. How do you sell a car to somebody? How do you do it?
I mean, I've been doing it for what, 5 years now. So, it's all about how you greet the customer. Firm handshake, just show them the vehicle, and then after that, these days vehicles pretty much sell themselves. So, um, it's not much to it these days. It's a lot of hours, a lot of time invested, but it's worth it.
I wanted to ask, to give you the chance to kind of explain, because I don't know many Maryland fans have heard from you. In 2006, I think we read that you were arrested for there's a gun outside the White House. What happened, and how much did you learn from that situation?
Yeah, back in 2006, coming from iBar in DC, just partying too much, a little bit to drink, just being irresponsible, being young, it led to, a gun being fired, and I was arrested, did 60 days in jails. I learned from that mistake, just something that, I had to put behind me, just part of my growing experience. But it's just an unfortunate incident. But, thank God no one was hurt. And it
Yeah.
was just something that happened, years ago.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, to kind of you learn from that and move on. And now, being in the car dealership, how much do you still pay attention to basketball? Like, do you still watch Maryland? Do you watch other teams? I know you obviously played in the NBA and played for some a variety of different teams. So how much do you still pay attention to hoop?
Yeah, I was just at the Maryland game against St. Mary's on Friday, so yeah, I definitely pay attention to the Terrapins. What's his name? Rodney Rice had an amazing game. I think he had like 28 points off the bench, 26 in the first half. So I'm always paying attention to the Terrapins and what they're doing. So
What do you think about this year's team? Who kind of has stand out to you so far? I mean, obviously you saw Rodney Rice go off, but anybody else kind of flashed to you so far?
I think Derek Queen is going to be big for those guys. You know, he's been amazing. His first game, where did he have 25 and 20 rebounds or something? You know, amazing. I mean, that's something you can't teach. So I think he's going to be a big factor this year, and they got a lot looking forward to this season.
As a big man, kind of explain to non-basketball players how difficult it is to get a 20 and 20 game. I mean, he was the first Maryland freshman to ever do it, first Maryland player, in 30 odd some years, I think. How difficult is that type of performance, and how much does that kind of, no matter the opponent, how much do you take away from that as a former player?
I mean, 20 rebounds is huge, no matter where you play. And for him to do that his first outing as a Terrapin is very impressive. I mean, that takes a lot of skill, a lot of effort. So I think he's going to be a very special player for the Terps, and I'm very excited to see what he brings this year.
I want to kind of get into your career after Maryland on the basketball side. You obviously get drafted in the NBA draft that year after. What's that kind of like? You're kind of bouncing around teams in the NBA, fighting for those roster spots.
It's definitely making the NBA is a dream come true. Competing for minutes. Going from team to team, as a person who's, a journeyman, it's just a big learning experience. You learn a lot about life, about yourself. But still, just being in the NBA period is a dream come true.
This is a question asked to a lot of NBA players, but what was your welcome to the NBA moment when you got to the league? Is there a specific time you remember being like, whoa, this is a different level of competition?
I remember one exhibition game we were playing the Minnesota Timberwolves, and Kevin Garnett was the most intense player I've ever seen. I mean, he was cursing and swearing, blocking shots. He was in a full sweat before the game. And I remember, I'm like, whoa, like, this is really serious. This is a different level than college. And I mean, he's 6'11", 7 foot wingspan, and he's just one of my favorite players I always looked up to.
What's it like playing overseas? I mean, you're from Maryland, obviously. Um, we've talked to Anthony Cowan, who played abroad, and he kind of explained the process of it. What was it like back then, especially in the early 2000s, playing internationally?
My first international experience, I played in Greece for Panathinaikos. So my first time away from leaving the states, it was a great experience. Greece was one of my favorite countries to play in. Um, the team opened me with welcome arms, and it was just a wonderful experience. Easy place to play, easy place to live, great cultural city. Just a great experience for my first time overseas.
Didn't James Gist play there? Do you
Yes,
do you
he
happen to
did.
know James Gist? That's our guy. We had him on like one of our first episodes. Awesome dude.
Yeah, I saw him at the game on Friday. So
Man, that's great. Um, is it when you play abroad, obviously, how much do you have to learn the culture too alongside the basketball, or are you kind of just there for business? Like what's that kind of relationship like?
you definitely have to learn the culture to know what's going on around you, to bond with your teammates, your coaches, and people in the city. So it's definitely a learning curve that you have to get used to. But like I say, when I played my first season in Greece, it was no problem at all. It was adjusting. It was very easy. Just one of my favorite places I've always been.
After Maryland in the professional world, you played on, I think, around 10 teams from 2002 to 2013. Was there a favorite year of your career at some point in there, either in the NBA or in Europe?
Um, I would definitely say all the years I spent 3 years in Greece. Just like I said, it was just an easy transition for me, easy city to live in. Playing for the best team, Panathinaikos. Also played for a team named Panionios and Glafada. And just the whole experience is just very welcoming. Just the best you can have just coming into a city like that.
Do you have a favorite story from when you were at Maryland, playing under Gary Williams? What's your favorite story under Coach Williams?
Favorite story. Coach is very intense, and then whenever we didn't start off the game the right way, he was always yelling at the bench, asking teammates like, "What did I eat for lunch or dinner?" Or like, "Why is he not doing what he's supposed to do?" But I mean, there's so many stories of just Gary just being who he is, and he just instilled a lot of grit and confidence in us, and he's just the greatest coach ever.
I read a story that you and Steve one practice were, I think, like chewing on your jersey or something, and he said like, stop eating your shirts, you're not at breakfast,
Oh
which
yeah,
captures the
our
persona.
first Maryland practice at Ritchie Coliseum, we were chewing on our jerseys. It's a bad habit we had. And he just looked at us like, "You two guys, what is wrong with you? Like, why are you eating your shirt?" And we just bust out laughing. And like, he just had that intensity from, he coached us hard from day one.
Definitely learned your lesson quick there. I know that some of the environments in Europe and in Greece get pretty crazy. How would you say that Cole Fieldhouse, kind of in its peak, early 2000s, compares to some of those environments in Europe?
Cofer House was the greatest. It was a loud arena. The way it was set up, the seats at the bottom, and it's like a big bowl you come into. The noise just carried over. It was a pretty hostile environment coming in the Coalfield House. One of the greatest stadiums. I actually won a city title there when I played for Anacostia in high school, so I'm very familiar with Coalfield House, and it is kind of similar to one of those European arenas.
Obviously, you mentioned you've kind of been in the car industry for the past 5 or so years, but have you been playing any basketball? Like after you finished, would you still kind of play recreationally, or did your career kind of
Um,
end after 2013?
I spend a lot of time here, so I'm at the dealership most of the time, most of the day. I just do some things to kind of stay in shape, but I haven't really played in a while. So hopefully I get out there soon when I find some time. But I'm mostly, just selling cars here all the time.
Lonnie, I bet you could still give a good 13-8 if you were playing there.
I don't know. I mean, I'll be 46 in January, so I need a lot of icy hot or Bengay, but
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate you coming on. Again, thank you for your time and good luck at the car dealership. And hopefully, we maybe see you around at a Maryland game.
yes, sir. Thank you for having me.